Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a challenge that's likely resonated with many of you listening. The often tricky business of thinking directly in English. If you've ever felt like your brain's kind of stuck in translation mode, slowing down your speaking or writing or just making it feel like you're not quite expressing your true thoughts in English, then, well, this is for you.
It's such a common experience for English learners. Really common. And it's important to understand that this feeling, it doesn't mean your English isn't good.
Right.
It's often just a sign that your brain is still processing through your first language, default mode almost.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So our goal today is to really get into the practical ways you can start to bypass that mental translator.
Yeah, skip that step.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We'll be looking at real-life examples and actionable techniques to help you make that leap to move from consciously translating to genuinely thinking in English.
Which leads to more fluent and, confident communication. That's the aim.
Definitely. We're digging into the insights from a fantastic YouTube video called How to Think in English from the English Pod Community channel featuring Natasha. Okay, let's unpack this fundamental hurdle first. Why is the decision to constantly translating from your native language such a barrier? Why does it make speaking and writing smoothly in English so hard?
Well, what's really interesting here is the cognitive load that translation imposes.
Cognitive load.
Yeah, think of it like this. You have a thought in one language, then your brain has to actively convert it into another language, word by word, structure by structure. This extra step, it just takes time and mental energy. It's why you might experience those pauses and hesitations when speaking. Your brain's working overtime.
Right.
Natasha's example of her student, Daniel, is so telling. He understood the grammar, he could write well, but in conversation, that mental translation created a bottleneck. It caused him to just kind of freeze up.
That makes perfect sense, like trying to pour water through a tiny funnel, like you said.
Yeah.
Daniel had the knowledge, but the translation process was restricting its flow in real-time conversation.
Exactly.
So how do we start to widen that funnel, so to speak? How do we get those English thoughts flowing more directly?
This brings up a crucial point about how we engage with English, in our daily lives. Natasha introduces a really effective initial strategy. Consciously practicing thinking in English during your everyday routines.
Okay.
Daniel's task of mentally describing his morning, just saying to himself, now I'm brushing my teeth. In English, it might seem almost too simple, right?
Yeah, very simple.
But it's a powerful first step in forging that direct link. The link between an action and the English thought associated with it. Think of it like building a new, faster route in your brain.
And it sounds like it worked wonders for him.
It really did.
After just a couple of weeks of this mental practice, Daniel noticed English sentences starting to form automatically without that prior translation step.
Bypassing it.
Now he's thinking in English throughout his day, when he's walking, eating, even when he's cooking and thinking, I need to chop the onions. That's a fantastic illustration of how you can embed English into the fabric of your daily life.
Exactly. And if we think about this from a, language acquisition perspective, this kind of consistent mental rehearsal helps to automate those fundamental language processes.
Automate them, yeah.
So it's like developing muscle memory, but, for your brain. By repeatedly connecting concepts and actions directly to their English equivalents, you're essentially creating stronger neural pathways.
Right.
Pathways that bypass the need for your native language as an intermediary. And this frees up cognitive resources for, the more nuanced aspects of communication later on.
Natasha also shared the experience of Sarah, who started keeping a simple English diary. Initially, she was mentally translating full sentences before interacting with customers,
Yeah, she mentioned that.
which she said felt very robotic. What was the turning point for her?
Well, what's fascinating here is the impact of consistent, low-pressure writing. Sarah shifted to simply jotting down a few basic English sentences about her day.
Just basic things.
Yeah, things like, today was a busy day, I helped many customers. Really simple. The surprising result was that after about a month, she began to notice herself thinking in English even when she wasn't writing.
Wow.
Her brain had started to adapt to the English sentence structure and word order. It's as if the act of writing helped to sort of prime her mind for English thinking in general.
It's like her brain got accustomed to the rhythm and patterns of English. So for those listening, the key takeaway seems to be, don't feel like you have to make huge leaps right away. Start small.
Definitely start small.
Try consciously describing the everyday things you see and do in English, just in your mind. I'm washing the dishes, the water is warm, or The bus is running late today. Just those little mental snapshots.
Precisely. These small, consistent efforts are often much more effective in the long run than trying to force a sudden shift. It's about gradually training your brain to make English its default mode of thought.
Now, let's talk about mental exercises and this idea of imagined conversations. This sounds like a really proactive way to prepare your mind for, real-world interactions in English.
Absolutely. Imagining conversations in English, even if they're just brief exchanges, like Natasha's examples, Michael, how was your weekend?
Yeah.
Offering Rachel help with a report. It allows your brain to rehearse common English voices and conversational turns in a low-stakes environment. You're essentially preloading your mind with potential language.
Right.
Language that you can then draw upon in real conversations. It's like running a simulation in your head.
That's a great analogy, a mental sandbox where you can play with the language without any pressure. And I love Natasha's personal example of describing new things she encountered in her target language.
Oh, yeah, the tree example.
Yeah, seeing a tree and thinking, the tree has green leaves. That's such a clever and simple way to turn everyday life into a secret classroom, as she called it.
What's particularly valuable about that secret classroom approach is the absence of performance anxiety.
Right. No pressure.
Exactly. You're not being judged. There's no expectation to produce perfect sentences. You're simply observing and labeling in English. This can really help to reduce the mental block that often comes with more formal language practice.
So we've looked at thinking in English for speaking and general thought. What about writing, specifically something like emails? How does this concept apply there?
Well, Natasha shares James's experience, and it really highlights how the translation process can also be a bottleneck in written communication. He found that initially he was mentally composing his messages in his native language first, before actually writing them down in English. And that led to him being slower and making more errors.
Makes sense.
The significant improvement came when he started to notice English ideas forming directly in his mind.
Without translating first.
Exactly, resulting in faster and more confident typing. It's about the language of your thoughts aligning with the language you're actually using to write.
So it's not just about being able to speak faster. It's about fundamentally shifting your internal language so that English becomes your go-to tool for communication. Allowing you to focus on clarity and conveying your message effectively, rather than getting bogged down in translating word for word.
Exactly. It's about internalizing the understanding that English is the primary vehicle for expressing your thoughts, rather than just a secondary layer that you apply after you've already formulated them in another language.
Okay, so for those of you listening who want to start making this shift, what are some concrete first steps you can take, like starting today?
Natasha offers a fantastic, manageable exercise. Immediately after listening to this, take just 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Okay.
To mentally describe your day in English from the moment you woke up until now. Keep the sentences simple. Focus on the basic actions and observations. And then throughout your day, try to incorporate self-talk in English during your regular activities, whether you're cooking, cleaning, or even just walking from one room to another. Just narrate it.
It's about turning English into your constant internal dialogue, your inner voice. Now, Natasha also emphasized that thinking in English isn't just a passive process of, absorbing the language.
Yeah.
It requires a conscious shift in your mindset.
Yeah, that's crucial.
How does that fundamental shift actually occur?
This is a really key point. Mark's experience where he had that realization. When he saw a chair, he simply thought chair without any translation back to his native language.
The direct link.
That perfectly illustrates this shift. It's that moment when the English word and the concept it represents become directly linked in your mind, completely bypassing the need for that intermediary translation step.
That's the real aha moment, isn't it? When the English word and the underlying idea become one and the same, a direct connection.
Precisely. And as Natasha recommends, focusing on everyday actions, consciously thinking I'm walking to the store directly in English, is a very practical way to cultivate this direct association.
Just labeling things as you do them.
Yeah, mentally labeling the actions you're performing in English as they happen reinforces this connection and makes it more automatic over time.
And the role of repetition must be significant here as well, right? Focusing on those high-frequency words and phrases that we use in our daily lives.
Absolutely. Tom's experience of actively practicing everyday vocabulary like coffee, breakfast, and work in different contexts throughout his day, it really demonstrates how consistent repetition helps to solidify those neural connections and build fluency with those essential foundational words. You use them all the time.
Now, thinking in your head is one thing, but actually speaking those thoughts out loud in English, that often feels like a much bigger hurdle for many learners. Why is making the effort to speak aloud so important in this process?
Speaking English aloud, even when you're alone, plays a vital role. It trains your brain to process the language more rapidly, and also, importantly, it helps develop the physical coordination of your mouth and tongue.
Ah, the physical aspect.
Yeah, to produce the sounds and rhythms of English. It essentially bridges the gap between your internal thoughts in English and your ability to communicate those thoughts externally. It's about getting your mouth and brain working in sync with the English language.
Natasha also brought up the idea of role-playing imagined conversations in English. How does this technique specifically contribute to thinking directly in the language?
Role-playing, whether you do it silently in your mind or actually speak the parts aloud, is a powerful way to prepare yourself for real-life interactions.
Like a rehearsal.
Exactly. By mentally working through potential questions and practicing your responses in English, just as James did when rehearsing his work presentation, you build confidence. And you make your English thinking more automatic and readily available in those actual communicative situations. It's like mentally rehearsing for a performance, yeah.
And Natasha's advice to try to pause less during conversations that might seem counterintuitive, right? You'd think pausing gives you time to formulate your thoughts. But I can see how constantly stopping to translate in your head would really disrupt the natural flow of conversation.
Exactly. While it's completely natural to want to be precise and grammatically perfect, especially when you're learning,
Sure.
focusing on maintaining the flow of communication, even if it means making a few minor mistakes, allows you to practice thinking in English in real time. It forces you to rely on your immediate understanding and formulation in English rather than constantly reverting to translation. And actually, those small errors are valuable learning opportunities.
Okay, that makes sense. And finally, Natasha recommended keeping a daily journal in English, even if it's just a few simple sentences about your day. How does this practice specifically help?
Keeping a regular English journal, as Sarah experienced, provides a consistent and structured opportunity to organize your thoughts directly in the English language.
Okay.
It compels you to actively find the English words and grammatical structures necessary to express your ideas and experiences. And that, in turn, strengthens that direct neurological link between your thoughts and their English expression. It's like practicing the skill of English thinking, but, on paper.
So it really does come down to building consistent habits, almost like strengthening a muscle through regular exercise, as Natasha pointed out.
It's a great analogy.
And Sam's experience of consciously immersing himself in English at work through reading, watching videos, engaging in self-talk, ultimately led to that more automatic mode of English thinking.
Sam's journey really underscores the powerful effect of consistent and varied exposure to the language. And as Natasha also mentioned, the technique of creating direct mental associations, seeing a tree and immediately thinking tree, without any translation.
Yeah, back to the tree.
That's a fundamental aspect of this. Actively connecting new English words to your personal experiences and real-world objects, as she advises, makes those connections even stronger and more memorable.
Now, what about when you're actually in a live conversation? It can be so easy to fall back into the habit of translating in your head, especially when you're feeling a bit under pressure. What strategies can help you stay in that English thinking zone?
Natasha's advice to focus primarily on conveying the main message you want to communicate, rather than getting overly fixated on finding the absolute perfect word that is absolutely crucial in those moments.
Just get the main idea across.
Exactly. Emily's experience with her presentations demonstrates this perfectly. By concentrating on her core message, this campaign has been very successful. She was able to communicate effectively, even if her English wasn't flawlessly perfect. It's about prioritizing clarity and communication over absolute grammatical perfection, especially in spontaneous situations.
So the key is to keep practicing those everyday routine tasks while thinking in English, making your morning coffee, doing household chores.
Keep it going.
And to really maximize your constant exposure to English through things like movies, podcasts, books. Tom's experience of listening to English podcasts during his commute and noticing his brain starting to recognize patterns and understand without consciously translating is really encouraging.
Absolutely. And actively describing your immediate surroundings in English, just as Sarah did within her apartment. And engaging in regular self-talk in English, like David narrating his morning routine to himself.
Yeah.
These are simple yet incredibly effective ways to keep your mind actively engaged in the English language throughout your day.
Natasha really emphasized the importance of consciously avoiding using your native language when you're thinking. And Rachel's experiment of dedicating an entire week to thinking only in English. That sounds intense.
It does sound intense.
But also, like, it could be a potential breakthrough for breaking that translation habit.
Yeah, full immersion, even if it's self-imposed, like Rachel's experiment, can be an incredibly powerful tool. It disrupts the ingrained habit of translation and forces your brain to rely solely on English as its primary language of thought. It's like giving your brain a full workout in English.
A workout, okay. And the combination of creating those vivid mental English scenes throughout your day, like imagining yourself getting ready in the morning and narrating it in English, coupled with the practice of reading aloud in English, really seems to reinforce both your comprehension and your pronunciation skills.
Exactly. And making a conscious effort to have conversations with yourself in English, as Oliver did, and focusing on clearly expressing your ideas rather than just translating word for word, both really valuable practices.
Yep.
Describing things around you in as much detail as possible in English and consistently keeping that English journal, as Sam found so helpful, further solidifies those neural pathways for English thought.
And finally, actively engaging with English media, whether that's watching TV shows and movies and even trying to repeat what you hear.
Yeah, the shadowing technique.
And making a conscious effort to integrate thinking in English into your daily routines, even something as simple as changing the language settings on your phone, all contribute to this shift.
And let's not forget actively using any new vocabulary you learn in context. That's huge. The power of consistent listening to English podcasts and audiobooks.
Keep that input coming.
Exactly. Creating a personal English immersion environment around you, using subtitles strategically when watching English content and gradually weaning yourself off them. The technique of shadowing native English speakers to improve your rhythm and intonation, consciously connecting English vocabulary to your personal interests and hobbies.
Makes it more relevant.
Yeah. And integrating English into your work or study routines through emails, notes, presentations, planning your day and making little mental notes in English, actively using English in social situations, labeling objects in your environment with their English names.
Sticky notes everywhere.
Could be. And even making everyday decisions by thinking through the options in English, like what should I wear today? Just doing that thought process in English. All of these small, consistent actions contribute to building that habit of thinking in English.
And just to recap some of those final powerful tips from Natasha, engage in mental conversations with yourself in English. Really focus on describing your environment in English. Turn your daily routines into opportunities for English narration. Consciously think in English during physical activities, and when you're trying to solve problems, make regular writing in English a habit. Use English puzzles and word games for enjoyable practice.
Keep it fun.
Leverage social media to practice your written English. Actively integrate English into your workday. Practice self-talk in English. Use mental exercises to describe things around you. Maybe use flashcards to reinforce vocabulary and sentence structure.
Sure, whatever works.
Maintain consistent engagement with English media. Practice visualizing scenarios in English. And perhaps most importantly, remember to stay positive and patient with yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Be kind to yourself.
It's a gradual process, but with consistent effort and these practical techniques, that shift to thinking in English is absolutely achievable.
It really is about consistently building and reinforcing those neural pathways, gradually training your mind to move away from relying on translation and towards seeing English as a natural and direct tool for both your thoughts and your communication.
So the core message here is clear. Making that transition from translating to actually thinking directly in English is a really significant step towards achieving greater fluency and confidence in the language.
A huge step.
It's not going to happen overnight, but as we've discussed, it's definitely within reach through consistent practice and by intentionally weaving these various techniques into your daily life.
And remember, it's about recognizing that every small effort you make, every mental description, every sentence you speak to yourself in English, it all contributes. It all builds towards this fundamental shift in how you engage with the English language.
And on that note, here's a final thought for you. Take a moment to consider one or two of the techniques we've talked about today that really resonate with you. And make a commitment to actively practicing them over the coming week. What small but meaningful changes could you introduce into your daily routine to immerse yourself more fully in the world of English thinking?